today we're going to focus on environment and health, and environment and economy. It's really not a Democratic issue, it's a nonpartisan issue, but the Democrats tend to focus more on climate change. But, you know, it's not just climate change that's the issue, it's what's in our environment. You know, the man-made kind of environment, you know, Agent Orange, pharmaceuticals in the water, and so on. So hopefully our speaker will talk about that. So I just wanted to mention some upcoming club and community events. And tomorrow there's a game day. If you play Samba or Mahjong or whatever, you can certainly join us at 2 o'clock. That's actually a Villages Democratic Club event. Then April 28th, there's an education forum, and Susan Halloran, a former, you know, DEI consultant, was fired by the state when they dropped the DEI program, which she's going to talk about her experience there. May 11th, there's the Marion County Democratic Gala for anybody who wants to spend $100 per ticket. And it's live music, speakers, dinner, etc. And I'm going to I'll send out the slides so you don't have to write anything down. And May 15th, May 16th actually, to 20th is the Democratic Women's Club, a Florida convention. And we've got some delegates here to the east. Who's going to go? I'm going to be there. Joe's going to be there. Barbara Occhiata is going to be there, and I don't know who else. I know at least those people. May 23rd to 24th is a convention or a meeting of the Florida Voices for Health. Those are the people that are actually trying to get the Medicaid expansion. But if you look at the site, it's pretty impressive the number of people they have, and they seem to have a lot of money, which is good because we were just talking, you know, about the state makes it so hard to get abortion, to it. So much money to do the abortion petition, so much money to do the marijuana petition, so much money. So there are, because you can collect them, you have to print all the copies, but then they have to pay to have somebody validate them. And that could be from 10 cents to $1 per petition. And I think the marijuana petition, they spent $38 million, is that right? to get it funded and to get it on the ballot. There's 6 petitions on the ballot. June 11th, Melinda is one of our members, a long-standing member, and she's not here today, but a lot of people aren't here today because of the holiday. But we have a just jewelry making convention, a workshop, jewelry making workshop is going to have, and I'll have to give you more details about them later after we talk to her. And then June 25th, if you want to go to Mount Dora, the Lake County Democratic Women's Club and ourselves are hosting a thing on education and Project 2025, if you haven't heard of that. It's pretty scary. That's what the Heritage Foundation wants to implement in Trump ways. And Chris Stanley is going to talk about the education part of it. And then, what else? Yeah. We have a recurring meeting on communications and media marketing, communications and media, and that is sorry. additional resources for the club. We need somebody to do VP of programming, somebody to be a backup for Mayor Schultz, and we need a legislative lead for the next sessions that are coming up. And it's pretty intense to do the legislative stuff. So, but you'll get a lot of help. So what should our election strategy be? Because it's really important that we have an election strategy. I had a boss who said, no strategy, no plan, no clue. To me, sounds like the Republicans today, but we need to get out the vote and vote by mail in Sumter, Lake, and Marion. Even though we probably have candidates that aren't going to flip a seat, we can still have a positive impact on statewide campaigns, like Debbie McCurshel, Paul, who's running against Rick Scott. She's really impressive. And then I think the next thing is we have to identify and heavily support candidates who have the potential for flipping a seat. And if there's additional time, there's other outside of Marion County, Marion, Lake, and Sumter. So I just started to make a list, and it's not complete, of all the candidates in Sumter, Lake, and Marion County. Again, I'll pass this out, but the newest one is Marilyn Halloran is running for state senator, representing District 11. And she's a retired Foreign Service officer who served at American embassies, and she's got a very impressive background. So hopefully, she is obviously concerned about the erosion of democracy, and she's seen it in other countries, and she sees it here now. So that's why she's running. And also, there are two people running that we need to support. They're attorney generals that were fired by DeSantis, even they were duly elected attorney generals that got fired. And we also have two judges that voted against the abortion petition, and so we can not renew them. Try not to renew them. So there's going to be 6 measures on the ballot. Most people know about the marijuana and the recreational use and the reproductive rights amendment, which just basically says that women should not have somebody between them and the doctor. But I know that the legislature is still trying to provide have a law that says that an embryo is a human. So that's going to be a problem in the future. There are important political dates. Again, I'll pass this out. Now let's get to the main event. So I think our climate disasters are here to stay. Unfortunately, some of the climate disasters are impacting them. Florida's like I'd say one of the key states that's going to be impacted by think that's why we have to learn how to talk about environment, climate change, because I think that it's never a priority for people. And I don't understand that because of course I've been involved in it very, very heavily. So if you look at climate change and human health, it has so many different aspects. It threatens human health and well-being in many ways. It includes impacts from, I'm not sure why that it's still doing that, including the impacts from increased extreme weather events, wildfires, and decreased air and water quality. There's threats to mental health and illnesses transmitted by food, water, and disease. Climate change will, absent other changes, simply amplify some of the existing health threats that we now face, largely man-made. And after Karl talks, I have a little quiz for you. Let's see how much you know about health and humans. It's pretty good. But, we have, issues with tuna and, almost anything you eat has problems now these days. So we need to push Floridians for clean, safe, and reliable water. And that's why Karl's here today. Unfortunately, we have a know-nothing, we have a Congress that's do-nothing and do-nothing Congress, although they think they did pass the Ukraine bill today, hopefully. So, Karl wanted me to tell you that, what he's going to talk about is actually a nonpartisan issue, which it should be, just like some of the other issues should be nonpartisan, because they affect everybody. And unfortunately, we have a minority running the majority. So one of the things we want to do is flip enough seats that we get out of the supermajority in Congress, Florida Congress. So Karl is our keynote speaker. I'm going to ask him to come up here. And he has a pharmacy, Fortune Pharmacies, and he's started, he's the founder and director of Florida Right to Nature Network and the Florida Right to Clean Water. He hails from Baltimore, and he thought he was retiring here. But as many of us find, we find that, we don't like how things are. And so we end up I actually do more work now than I used to when I actually worked for money. So I do more for free than I do, anyway. I'll let Karl talk to you about that.
Thank you, Sue. This live? This one?
I guess you turned the lights off.
It's nice to have a joke of this.
So, morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Captain Karl Deigert. I'm a captain by avocation as a charter boat captain, not military service. So I've been coming to Florida since I was in diapers. My dad's sister lived in Fort Lauderdale back in the 50s. I'm born in 1961, so I've been coming since I was in diapers. I had the good fortune of learning how to scuba dive when I was 14 in Maryland, and I brought my passion for the water to Florida in 1986. I lived 27 years in Isla Morada in the Florida Keys. The first time I saw, and I do get emotional about this. First time I saw our coral reefs in the 70s, we had 70% hard coral growth. Today, we have less than 3% hard coral growth. Our coral reef system is basically a dead rock pile. There's major efforts to restore it, but this is a biological system that develops over thousands of years and not to be restored in a few years. So a little history about how I came here today. When you live in the Florida Keys for 27 years, you really don't know what's happening north of the Jewfish Creek Bridge. You just, every day is happy hour. Everybody's having fun. So in 2012, I left the Florida Keys and I moved to Citrus County, Inverness. And it didn't take long for me not to live back in the woods. So I moved, bought a small waterfront motel in Matlacha, Florida. If you don't know Matlacha, it's in Lee County, just off of Cape Coral. It's a little island, 750 people. Then you have Pine Island, then you have Sanibel, Captiva. My little motel, waterfront, was basically 8 or 9 miles north of Sanibel, to give you some perspective. That's where the Caloosahatchee River dumps out into San Carlos Bay, Pine Island Sound, and into the Gulf of Mexico. Bought that motel in 2014. I said to my aunt that that's where I was going to die. She said, no, that's where you're going to live. In 2016, we had the first major cyanobacteria harmful blue-green algae bloom in the Caloosahatchee River at Lake Okeechobee. And I stood on my dock and I said, if it comes to my dock, I'm going to have to leave. In 2021, I left. The algae would back up in our canal so thick that our guests could not fish off of our dock. My water tours out to the barrier islands, the DWCV was tying up dead manatees to the municipal dock at the end of my canal that I had to take my paying guests past. I sold my business, the motel and the water tour business, because I just no longer could view the devastation. I believe there's an impending economic collapse coming to Florida based on failed water quality. A lot of businesses in Sanibel started to change. The South Seas, biggest South Seas condominiums produce 10% of the bed tax for the state of Florida. They recently sold a couple years ago before the hurricane to a new owner. A lot of the long-time family-owned marinas left. I think they saw the writing on the wall much like I did. So 2016 we had the algae bloom. 2018 we had a severe red tide event. The businesses of Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, my little motel went to zero. We had so much dead sea life across our beaches, they were putrid. We could not visit them for multiple weeks at a time. People were standing in food lines because they had been laid off from their employers on Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel. So watching the devastation occur Florida Keys, my own backyard, brought me to dive in what the hell is going on here. I wish I had never done this, quite honestly. I was a much happier guy before I knew about all the tendrils that lead to failed water quality in Florida. Everything from corporate ties, cronyism, corruption, it's amazing. So, because I was very vocal in Southwest Florida about water quality, beating the drum, I was asked to run for office in 2018, 2019 for 2020 House of Representatives. I said yes, and then about 2 weeks later I discovered what's called rights of nature laws. Rights of nature laws are to give ecosystems themselves, even a species of plant, constitutionally framed, personified rights to exist, thrive, and regenerate. Kind of hard to wrap your head around. People go, oh, you're going to give a rock a right to exist. It's much broader than that. But it's hard to explain to people. So I brought that concept to Southwest Florida. There was a fellow in Orange County, Chuck O'Neill, some of you may know him. He's been in the political arena for a long time. And he was voted Orange County Man of the Year for all his advocacy work. So, short story, in 2020 we formed what we call the Florida Rights of Nature Network. Chuck and his gang, Orange County, successfully amended the county charter to create a rights of nature law for all water bodies in that county. And it's still in the books today. But in Orange County, every body of water, lake, stream, river, has the personified right to exist, thrive, and regenerate. Well, and that was put on the ballot in 2020 and passed with an 89% approval rate of voters. So we know that clean water is important to everyone. Our state legislature, when they got wind of what was happening in Orange County, passed a law in August of 2020 preempting any creation of rights of nature laws anywhere in the state of Florida. So if they can't support a right for the ecosystem to exist, then what are they protecting? You have to ask yourself that question. So in 2022, our folks, okay, so that preemption snuffed out our rights of nature work across the state. We had multiple municipalities. Our work was to approach each of the 412 chartered cities in the state of Florida to create their own rights of nature law locally. And building that groundswell of support and momentum, then we would move to the state level to create amend the state constitution with the rights of nature law. Well, that preemption snuffed out our work. So we had to drop back and think about what we were going to do. Legal minds much greater than myself came up with what we are proposing today with your petitions that you have, is a human civil right, fundamental right, clean water. So then we can extrapolate this onto the ecosystems, onto the waters, because if we have that right, then by extrapolation, the water must be clean. Right? So the great workaround, the nice thing about this, human rights cannot be preempted. So the legislature cannot undo this, right, like they did for us. With this right to clean water, any of the 412 towns in the state of Florida, and I don't know exactly how the structure, governmental structure here in the villages works, but you can amend a local charter by the same petition process. Some towns in Florida are so small, Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach, for example, can do it with just 700 signatures to create their own legal right. So, knowing with the preemption we had to go to the state level, we decided not to pull back away from the individual town and go straight to a state constitutional amendment for the right to clean water. Titusville took this language, and in their town, they passed a legal right to clean water in Titusville in 2022, again with 80-some% support from the voters that think this is an important issue. But their 5 town commissioners have taken it to court to defeat it after the people voted it into place that they have a constitutional right to do. Their own commissioners are still to this day trying to not encode it into the charter. They've been told 3 times now by 3 different judges that they have to follow the will of the people. By the petition process, the majority always won and worked. So when I was asked to go to Tallahassee a month later, and I found out about this, I thought, wow, I don't need to go to Tallahassee as a junior representative with basically wet behind the ears and convince 160, 140 guys to think like me. I already know that most of the Floridians think like me. So why not take a petition to the people? We, the people, can recapture our right to self-governance through this petition process, create the law we want to protect our community. So that's where we got to where we are today. So just to go read the preamble to the petition, you can find the full petition text at FloridaRightToCleanWater.org. You don't even have to remember it. If you just Google up, we've been at this for a couple of years. If you just Google Florida Right to Clean Water, you're going to find all kinds of articles. We have international coverage, we have national coverage, state coverage. So if you just Google Right to Clean Water or Clean Water Florida, I'm sure we're going to pop up. But the ballot title is The Right to Clean and Healthy Waters. This amendment creates an enforceable, fundamental right to clean and healthy waters, authorizing a person to sue for equitable relief when a state executive agency, by action or inaction, allows harm or threat of harm to Florida waters. This amendment provides for strict judicial scrutiny of such action or inaction, adds to available remedies, identifies effective constitutional provisions, provides for enforcement, defines terms, and requires attorneys' fees and costs to prevailing plaintiffs. So the key points in this are equitable relief. One of the false narratives that we hear all the time is this is going to create a windfall for attorneys and it's going to create a bunch of frivolous lawsuits. That you're going to be able to sue your neighbor for motoring down the canal too fast. It's not, because equitable relief means that we're only looking to compel those state agencies that are being litigated against to do the jobs that they were empowered to do. This is not about monetary damages or big monetary awards to some plaintiff. It's about getting the state agencies to enforce the regulations to either stop doing or start doing an activity to prevent that harm. So people say, well, we already have a right to sue polluters. Well, you do have a right to sue polluters in the state of Florida until they're issued a permit for the activity that they wish to do, which is maybe destroying a wetland, to build a new extension to a development, any development, to build a roadway, either municipal or a governmental agency wants to build a highway through wetlands. There's no way to, they obtain permits from the DEP and the EPA and Army Corps of Engineers. Once those permits are issued, making what would be an illegal activity, a legal activity, they no longer are held liable for the damages that they do, right? So this is where this fundamental right supersedes some of the stuff that's already on the books that allow things to happen. So frivolous lawsuits are just not going to happen. If you want to challenge an environmental permit in the state of Florida, it's going to cost you $100,000 to $200,000 to defeat a permit. permit issuance is really just a method of staged environmental destruction. Because if that permit applicant assumes that the permit will be issued, as an advocacy group or an active that wants to push back against the permit, you have to go full civil type hearing to oppose that permit. It's not just a process where you get up and state your 3 minutes and hope they're going to listen to you. You got to bring your attorneys, your expert witnesses, you get all dressed up, you go down to court, and you have a big battle for weeks and months at a time. And it's an expensive process, so there's not going to be a bunch of frivolous lawsuits. The other important part here is the provides for strict judicial scrutiny. So a lot of people ask, well, the FWC was created by constitutionally, and they're all powerful. Well, so if the FWC or the Florida Department of Environmental Protection wants to do an activity that could potentially harm our waters, the courts, because this is a fundamental right on par with your right to free speech, religion, right to bear arms. This is how powerful this law will be. The court has to use strict scrutiny to defend the human right above the actions that may harm our water. So if the FWC or DEP wants to issue that permit, and they must have a compelling reason to benefit state interest over and above your human right to that clean water. So it's going to be very hard for them to do that. And if they can do that, then they must also adhere to the provision not to harm the water while they do whatever it is they want to do, right? So this is the highest level of protection for our waters in western jurisprudence. So that's where we're at. So I will open up to questions. And, yeah.
It's great and important that we have clean water. My concern is the age and poor quality of the piping that gets water into our cities and even our rural areas. I know that I came from before I moved here, I came from the western, northwestern part of the state, Fort St. Joe. Their pipes are so old, full of lead, that when you turn the water on, it's yellow when it comes out. So the water quality could be excellent, but if it's going through corroded pipes, it's not going to get to the people in a healthy way.
Yes, ma'am. I'm 100% in agreement. So Florida is number one for many things. We're number one for the number of lead pipes in the nation. More than Chicago, more than Detroit. We have more lead pipes in the state of Florida than anywhere else in the United States. We're number one for the most polluted lakes in the United States. We have 9,000 miles of rivers that are fecal contaminated.
Well, that's in part because they let the sewers go into our bays and our waterways.
Right. So in my little motel, I couldn't even believe this happened. So I used to rent boats at the little motel. And the fellow rented my boat, and it took me a couple of days to catch up with him to get the payment for it, because we were pretty relaxed about things. And so I sit down with him and his wife, and we're back and forth, where are you from, what you doing? Oh, I work for the EPA. And my wife is a civil attorney for the Army Corps of Engineers. And I was like, holy cow, I got the devil in the head now. And this fellow, Robert Capt is his name. He's a regional director for the EPA. That puts him like 3 steps down from the president. You got the head of the EPA, then this guy, right? He was in charge of the Southeastern District. He's now Region 5, which is Midwest, like Chicago area. But he was a director in the Southeast. He told me that our infrastructure in Florida is so severely dilapidated that in Broward and Dade counties, they expect a catastrophic failure of the sewer systems there before they remediate the damage that's going on. They're trying to lay parallel systems to the old cast iron systems, and that's happening all across the state. You can sign up for environmental alerts at the DEP for your town, your county. I, just for kicks and giggles, signed up for all 67 counties. I had to shut it off. I would sometimes receive 60 or 70 pollution alerts a day across the state. I had to shut it off. The sewage spills are common across the state based on failed infrastructure. You're absolutely right.
Well, a lot of it, there's still septic systems.
Yes.
And that's when you're in a sandy environment, that eventually goes to the ocean.
Absolutely.
Water.
Yeah. And a lot of those septic systems are 50, 60, 70 years old now. And they are failing. They need to be elevated, they need to have vegetation on top to suck out the nutrients of the leach field. There's good ways to do it. Septic systems can be very effective at nutrient sequestration if they're done properly. Yeah, but absolutely, sewering is vital to protecting our waters. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is our illustrious governor accepting any of the federal infrastructure monies to get rid of the lead pipes?
That was sarcasm, right?
So,
Oh,
Governor DeSantis came to office being pro water quality. In South Florida, he kicked off the members of the South Florida Water Management District and put his own folks in place. He created the harmful algal bloom task force in 2019. This is I don't know how many guys sit on that task force, but multiple. And they brought forth all the scientific remediation and mitigation suggestions that they could come up with to better our water quality. To date, only 12.7% of their recommendations have been implemented. That means 87% have been ignored. Right? So, they keep throwing money at the infrastructure to restore the Everglades. We hear this quite often. We're going to send water south. The water in Lake Okeechobee is so polluted. Mainly 70% of the nutrients in Lake Okeechobee come from north of Lake Okeechobee. From this area, flows all the way down. Hits Lake Okeechobee. It has a 200-year legacy level of phosphorus in the muck there. If we never put another molecule of phosphorus into Lake Okeechobee, it would take 200 years for it to get back to normal. You hear about building reservoirs. The whole reservoir project, I think, is a farce. The lead scientist for the Everglades Foundation spoke out against the building of the reservoir and the expenditures, billions of dollars that are being thrown at it. His opposition landed him in jail from political backlash. So they don't want to hear anything opposing what they already are slating for Everglades restoration. Yeah. So.
but is he going to take the money and that they're offering to get rid of the lead?
So I've heard he's pushed back. I haven't dug in on that quite as hard as I probably should, but yeah, a lot of federal money is being rejected based on, false narratives. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just like Medicaid expansion.
Do I understand this is a constitutional amendment initiative, so it's not on the ballot now, is that correct?
Nope, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. So we need 900,000 signatures. That's 10% of the number of residents that voted last general election. It's 800 and some, but it's 900,000. What happens is, a lot of these petitions are signed, people move. Each one of these goes to the supervisors of elections, just like a mail-in ballot, for verification of the signature. So if you haven't updated your signature recently at your supervisor of elections, go down and update your signature. Because as we get older, we tend not to, we get a little lazy. So the rejection, there's a rejection rate. We send 100 in, we're going to lose 15 to 20% of them sometimes. Because where it says counties, a lot of people put USA. We have people looking at these in each region. That brings me up to, we need volunteers. The village is across 3 different counties. We need representatives for right to clean water in every 67 counties. So we're looking for volunteers to do multiple things, from gathering petitions to verifying accuracy, carrying them to the supervisor of elections. We need a massive groundswell of support. Funding will drive the bus. Sue mentioned that the marijuana folks spent $38 million. The abortion folks spent $23 million. We've met with these operational groups, the people behind these initiatives, to try to get their best advice. We're very proud that in the first election cycle, 2020 to 2022, we are fully grassroots, volunteers. We have no paid staffing. We were able to collect 120,000 signatures, give or take a little bit, on a shoestring budget because of our volunteers. We have 250 organizations backing this. League of Women Voters was really a big push because as they were out collecting, doing voter registration, they were having people sign the petition, and I would encourage you all to do that. I know you guys are big on voter registration. But ultimately, we think we can do this. Sue mentioned signature verification. Because we are grassroots, we are able to follow what's called an affidavit of undue burden. So we currently do not pay that fee for verification. But if at some point we have benefactors that want to hang their hat on this initiative, I'm buying lottery tickets, so I can buy my own state constitutional amendment. They're for sale, you can buy one. All you need is $15 million. You can buy your state constitutional amendment for anything you want, right? So if I had the $15 million to throw at this, I would write that check tomorrow. That's how much I believe in this. Ultimately, we would hope that we can get benefactors so that we could hire paid petition gatherers, and then we would be on the hook for those fees. Not only are we on the hook on the fees going forward, okay, we're a year into the process. We just started a couple weeks ago for the second cycle. And if you sign before, you have to sign again because the state nullifies the original signatures. The 100,000 we collected, they void those, and we have to start back from ground zero. But we're not starting from zero because we have that database. So we essentially just need to get those people signed again, then do this. There's success in numbers. Every signature, I want, if you all would please take 3 or 4 extra petitions with you today and give them to your friends. Because exponentially that grows. And if they give it to 3 or 4, you can see the number grows for it.
I have a question. What's the date? I signed this relatively recently in Lake County. Jackie Arnott, I think, is the person that's coordinating for us. So what was the date that if I signed it after this date, it's still okay or not?
Yeah, so if you signed it this year.
This year, 2024.
Yeah, if you signed it after late February, March of 2024, that's when we got the approval for the new language. We modified the language a little bit. So regarding the language, we often hear that the state will reject the petition at this. Once you raise 250,000 signatures, you have to get Supreme Court review. For the amendment. They don't particularly judge the language, but they will scrutinize it, and they can kick it at that point, even though you've gotten that far in the process, 25% of your signatures, they can still not kick it out, and you've got to go back and modify your language and come back again. Right? They're making it as difficult as possible. Just moving 900,000 pieces of paper, every one of these pieces of paper has to be carried by our volunteers to some supervisor of elections in some county to process. When you add it up, 900,000 sheets of paper weigh almost 4 tons. It's a stack of paper that's 800 and some feet high. Right? Just to put it in perspective for you. It's a gargantuan effort. And you know, we're 6 or 7 guys sitting around a table one day going, hey, this is a good idea. Well, when you start putting legs on, on this and wheels on the bus, you go, man, this is a big challenge. And then when you start looking at the finances of it all, we have enough money to print these petitions and distribute them widely. But I always say this, and I've been saying this for years, what we're doing parallels a political campaign, right? My name was, I used to say, I'm Ron, Rights of Nature. I need to get Ron on the ballot. So I've got to build the base, I've got to build recognition, name recognition. I've got to have yard sale signs, radio ads, TV time. All this stuff is, burns money. We know what the politicians spend. This is basically the same thing. So at the end of the day, again, so raising the 900,000 signatures is just the tip of the iceberg, because then you have to bring the public awareness so people vote for it at election time. Signatures.
Please repeat the question, we can't hear.
Yeah.
This is not our work.
Where do I find information online?
FloridaRightCleanWater.org. So to go to FloridaRightCleanWater.org, you can volunteer there. You can ask your local businesses that might want to become collection sites. You can do that. You can sign up as an ambassador with no obligation, but just to stay updated and to share the information. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question, it's kind of off target here, but
Okay.
in the villages, what's the impact of the villages that's already been built? And as we continue south, I've heard there's 15,000 more homes going in. What's the impact that the villages has had on the water
Right.
around here?
So the state of Florida has lost 1/3 of its total wetlands area in the last 100 years. 1/3 of the total. I forget what, it's some dramatic percentage just in the last couple of decades. Right? So every new bedroom, every new bathroom is another straw in Florida's cup. How many straws can you put in Florida's cup before we suck it dry? It's already predicted that by 2030, most of South Florida won't have enough clean water to sustain itself. We already have counties that have installed desalination plants. Polk County in the middle of the state is installing desalination plants because they've extracted so much water from phosphate mining and development that the saltwater intrusion from below is contaminating their water, which makes it undrinkable. We have multiple counties that are now using what's referred to as toilet to tap. The water you flush down your toilet goes down to the processing plant, it's ultra purified and put back into your drinking water system. This is happening across the country. The world is running out of fresh water. Globally, they expect the water consumption to be 40% greater than recharge. We are running out, as a planet, we are running out of fresh water. So when you have these major developments, basically you're adding more straws to the cup. You're destroying the wetlands that are so important for let the surface water surface down to recharge the aquifer. All of our springs, 80% of our 1,000 springs are now designated as polluted. They like to refer to it as impaired. Let's get rid of the euphemism. They're polluted for nutrients. when you go kayaking on our springs, which I've always held out as the crown jewel of Florida, they still look really pristine. But if you are aware, you're going to see that bright green slimy algae. That's not supposed to be there, right? But it's there. Manatees, we have a mortality event of manatees. We've lost 25% of our manatees in the last 2 years because they don't have seagrasses to feed on. Because the water's so polluted across the state that the seagrasses are no longer growing to feed the manatees. We have pharmaceuticals. We have, the state puts out a fish consumption publication. You can go to FWC or just Google up fish consumption in Florida. Gives you a whole book of every fish species and how much you're allowed to eat per week or month. And if you're pregnant, you shouldn't eat any of it. That's how bad it is. Okay. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So I moved to the Villages this past year, and we live on a golf course. And I am just absolutely amazed at the amount of fertilizing, spraying, pesticides. I go down the road, and almost every neighbor has a jug of Roundup. It's terrible. Unbelievable to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Ugh.
No. That needs to stop.
You know, in the county I lived in Maryland, it's illegal.
Yeah, so we do, a lot of the counties do have fertilizer ordinances, but are they enforced? Yeah. You know, during rainy season, a lot of the counties suggest that people do not fertilize their yards, but it's really unenforceable. The state has a thing called the Basin Management Action Plan, BMAP as it's referred to as. This is basically a smoke and mirrors program where they calculate total daily loading of nitrogen and phosphorus to a water body. Municipality can then take mitigating steps to reduce that nutrient loading. And so I was in litigation against the city of Cape Coral because the little town, Mount Lachey, where I had my little business, just sits across the 1 mile wide water body called Mount Lachey Pass from Cape Coral. They're constantly doing things to pollute their own boundary waters. You ever heard the expression, don't poop where you sleep? This is happening way too often in Florida. But yeah, they have a fertilizer ordinance like that. But so what they're putting on the ground is glyphosates, that's your Roundup. All the pesticides, herbicides, they're all phosphate-based chemicals. So when they break down into phosphorus, and that flows into some ditch, which flows into some, waterway, and then makes its way to Lake Okeechobee and further south. You know, every drop of rain out here, I was told that every drop of rain that falls on the Continental Divide flows into the Gulf of Mexico at some point. Yeah, so.
Well, I guess, I'm just renting, but I guess it's a homeowners association, where there's strict rules. The owner of the house came to me and said, a neighbor reported us because there was a weed in the crack of the driveway. And I just was like, you have got to be kidding me. I mean, the weed was maybe that tall. And I was just like, are you kidding me? So it's like you're forced to do these crazy things because, a lot of people have arthritis and can't bend and pull weeds. And, it's nuts to me.
Yeah, and a lot of the plant communities have, regulations that you must have a lawn. Your lawn must be nice and pretty and green, and it would be nice if we could get back to native plantings and vegetation, and to support our pollinators. And,
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, all these things are. If you go onto Facebook, our own FWC manages aquatic invasive species, the hydrilla, the water hyacinths. They manage this by spraying aquatic herbicides. They literally hose down every water body in the state of Florida like this, right? With millions of gallons and multi-millions of dollars of taxpayer money to poison our waters. And what happens is, so they got this plant, these plants actually suck up the nutrients, the phosphorus and the nitrogen, and clean the water. Well, what happens when you kill the plant that's sucked that up, you've killed that plant, now it's going to sink down to the bottom, rot and decay, and it releases the phosphorus and nitrogen right back into the cycle to make more plants. So it's been proven that mechanical harvesting, to take that stuff out into a field, mulch it up and feed it to cows and use it as fertilizer, it could be done equally as effectively and cost effectively as chemical management. But guess what? Multiple of the commissioners sitting on the FWC have, number one, they have no biological scientific training. Most of them are developers. Most of them have no, one of them is Jack Nicklaus's son, who builds golf courses, right? These guys have ties to chemical companies. They sit on the boards of chemical companies that sell chemicals to the state to do this process. So, you know.
Are they elected or appointed?
They're appointed.
Right.
They're absolutely appointed. I wish, you know, if the FWC promoted from within, you know, the guys out measuring fish and checking your fishing license, those are dedicated guys. If they would promote from within, that agency would be so much better off. And it's totally different than it is today. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to keep up with all that.
When do these petitions have to be submitted?
So, yeah, so our deadline is, we set our own deadline. We can actually go into, I think, February of 2026. So they give us 2 years to collect the signatures. It used to be 4 years. Used to be 4 years to collect the signatures, but then they narrowed it to 2 years. Every signature has to be a wet signature. They don't allow, you know, electronic signature gathering. If we could, you know, when politicians in the state of Florida during COVID were out petitioning because, you know, candidate can petition to get onto the ballot, right? So they don't have to pay the fees. This is kind of similar. They allowed electronic signature gathering so they could get onto the ballot themselves. But they don't allow electronic signature gathering, which is just as secure for this as it could be for that, but they don't allow it. They really don't want to hear from us. They make this as difficult as possible. But yeah, we have 2 years to do it.
I have a comment and also a suggestion. Last year I went around with 2 petitions, one for abortion and one for clean water. As you know, the clean water one did not get on the ballot this time, and abortion did, which kind of surprised me because I think abortion is a lot more controversial than clean water. I think one of the problems, which really is much better here, was the language. To me, was like kind of difficult to understand exactly what that clean water was, where this is easier.
You think it's better?
It's a lot better.
Thank you. Yeah.
And also, I guess I felt more comfortable talking about abortion in that I felt more knowledgeable, whereas the clean water, I was, like if they had questions, I was kind of clueless, even though I tried to research it. So I was wondering if you could give like kind of a cheat sheet for the people that go around so that they could have bullet points to address or commonly asked questions. I think it would be a lot easier for us.
So on our website, we do have a very well thought out, and so we've been at this for a couple of years. We get all the difficult questions. We think we've got most of them covered. There's always somebody that comes in with a zinger, right? But we have a FAQ, frequently asked questions section on our website. And if you're out petition gathering, it would be a good idea to either have it on your phone handy or review those questions so you have a response to all the different.
I only had one person who refused to sign it, and the reason being was that she said there's always a flip side. She said, yes, I sign it because of the flip side.
Yeah. So, right, so it will have a cost. You know, if this gets implemented, there is a chance that your municipality or your county, if they're compelled by the court to stop whatever it is they're doing that's allowing harm to the water, where's the funding for that going to come from, right? So, because this application of strict scrutiny, the court will compel the agency to take whatever action it is, and the agency is going to throw their hands up in the air and go, we don't have money for that. Well, this is a human right. Go find it. Whatever you got to do, stop doing that and start doing this, because you've got to take action here, right? Is it possible that they would pass that on to the taxpayer? Maybe. But what's the cost of the pollution now? What is the cost of remediating the damage that's already done in the pollution? Prevention is always less costly than remediation.
Yes.
So spend the money now or spend it later? You're going to spend money, right? So that would be pushback on that. Yes, ma'am.
I know Florida has a lot of above-ground mining operations, as well as power plants and paper mills. How much pushback from those corporations are you getting?
So we expect massive pushback once we get through the Supreme Court review process. Right now, they kind of know they don't have any money, and let's just wait and see. Mining, the state issues mosaic phosphate mining. You guys ever been out to Polk County, right up Route 27 through the middle of the state, and you see these big mountains? I always thought they were landfills or something, right? Right, that's the byproduct of phosphate mining. They scarified the earth down to about 75, 80 feet. And then they washed that with sulfuric acid to extract the phosphorus, and they got that's radioactive. So now they piled up in these mile-long, 450 feet high stacks. They call them gyp stacks, phosphogypsum waste byproduct. On top of that, they store that sulfuric acid slurry on top of that in lined pits. Constantly, there's one right now leaking again. In 2016, one of these gyp stacks fell into a 900-foot hole right into our aquifers. This happens all the time. We had Piney Point recently, 2 years ago or so, dumped all its contents into Tampa Bay, right? Major fish kills. Mosaic phosphate mining is horrific. They got more money than God. They are going to come out so hard against this. There'll be negative ad campaigns. We expect major pushback. Right now, our biggest pushback is agricultural interest in the state of Florida. Many of our legislators are big agricultural owners. One fellow down in Palm Beach County last year. So a citizens initiative ballot. So to get this, we get it on the ballot, but it requires 60% of approval by the voters to enact it. The guy in Palm Beach, I think it's Rick Ross is his name. He wanted to bump that to 72%. He actually introduced legislation to bump it to 72%. Now imagine most states are 51%, this gets passed. We already are at 60%, and now they're trying to bump it up even higher. We think that might be a little bit of the pushback against what we're doing, because they can't preempt this human right. How are we going to beat this? Well, let's change the number that is required to pass it. So, yes, ma'am.
Where do we get more of these petitions?
Call me, David, call me.
Just call me. It has to be your
Yes.
official form, right?
Yes.
You can print them
So you can go online. You can go to our website. You can print out as many as you want.
Okay.
It's the same exact form.
So when I fill it out and I like to go over to where the election office is. So when I take my ballot there, I get to see it go actually in the, secured box.
Yeah.
So what do they do with this?
So on this there's an address you can mail it to, or we have, and this is one of the things we're looking for volunteers that'll be a regional collector of these things, and they can just carry, you know, a stack of them down there. Because we are grassroots, if you're using paid petition gatherers, you have to submit these before 30 days. If you are grassroots, the time limit to get them to the SOE doesn't apply. So we can hang on to them for 30 days or even 6 months. So regionally, if somebody's helping collect those, you want them all to get there, so it's for accounting purposes. But yeah, so we're looking for people just to do that.
Okay, but even if somebody goes and brings a whole bunch, where does it go?
Well, you can bring it to his next meeting.
Yeah, or they all have to go to a supervisor's elections office in the county,
Okay.
and they process it.
I just didn't know if
Do
there was
you
like.
have somebody for Sumter?
So I'm not. It's hard for we're onboarding so many people so quick. So what we do have, please go to our website. We have regions. We have 10 different regions. We have Facebook groups regionally. I'm the North region, so I'm like Marion County, Levy County, kind of up that side. But then there's a Northeast region, which is Jacksonville down to like Daytona kind of area. Then we have the East Central region. You're going to be the East Central part of these counties, or the East Central region. So when you go on, you can sign up for a region, you can sign up as a volunteer, you can specifically for your county. Yeah. And then we have regional, so we have the directors, we have the board of directors, and then we have the next, all our volunteers are referred to as ambassadors, and then we have county captains, which basically organize their county, or, you know, and those borders are, you know, amorphous, they change, you know, you can help the guy, if you're in Citrus, you can help the guy in Pinellas, or, you know, Marion, or if you're in Lake, you can do Sumter, so, yeah. So, I mean, right now, today, we have volunteers all over the state collecting petitions at different, because Earth Day's on Monday. So a lot of those Earth Day events are happening today. We have people all over the state collecting petitions today. And thank you for letting me be here today. Can you zoom in?
Picture, yeah.